Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Foxhole Community Media podcast. Tonight we have quite a bit to talk about. Some important stuff, the world conquest that we all are dying for. But more importantly, we have some wonderful people joining us tonight. Start off, we have Stranger Days.
Yes.
I Saw a Bear.
I know the way to the front lines.
Lurkus.
Oh my god. Why?
Sunchips.
Please no the way memes anymore.
And Tiberius.
Hello, welcome.
And
Deal with the memes.
And of course, none other than Markfoot himself.
How's it going, guys?
Hi. Now that we've all introduced ourselves, except for myself.
Are we sure this is Markfoot, not a soundboard?
I actually do have a Markfoot soundboard. It just has exactly 0 sound bites in it.
That's really creepy.
I mean, you should be creeped out.
That's the first soundbite.
That's really creepy. Perfect. So, I don't know exactly where you guys want to start. We've got the One World Review, which the first dev stream of the time here. That's we've got the One World Review, which importantly has kind of the more details that they've already been talking about, but kind of fleshing out a little bit. The gameplay expectations. I'm really curious to see how the wars are going to be lengthened significantly. I don't know, like the old school world conquest. It took a few days, but not like a significant amount of time. Granted, there are only a few maps conjoined. But I don't know. Like, do people enjoy wars ending within the same day? I don't know.
I mean, the people, I guess, who would, those are people who maybe don't have as much time on their hands to, like, play for a significant amount of time. But I'm pretty sure most of the people that get this game understand that, at least not right now, it won't be as long term, but in the future it will. So, I mean, I personally would like them to last longer, but
Yeah.
pretty sure most people are probably the same way or not. I don't know.
One of the
Well, I
things we
wanna-
need to keep in mind too is along with conquest and campaign itself, skirmish maps will be available for members of the community that don't have a lot of time to put into actually participating in the campaign, but they'll still be able to assist in everything on the field.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so like
It's
I would
like-
think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You have too many
My
people.
personal opinion is just like, I don't care if I win the map that day, but I would like to see some progress, even if it's not my team's progress, as long as someone's making some progress, and it's not just like, oh, well, we moved the front line 5 meters and then it immediately got pushed back,
Yeah, so like I think for us, even for players who don't necessarily want to play for like days on end, I think in our perfect world, we definitely want those types of players to be able to jump in, even if they can only play for like an hour, but just kind of knowing that what you're doing is going to matter, sort of like beyond the next day or two, is really nice, right? Because, because for sure, we just want these wars to have much more of like a meaning. And I think when wars last only for a day or two, it definitely doesn't make it that meaningful. Like it kind of finishes, it rolls over, it starts the next one. It's fun and everything. But I don't think we've ever, at any point in the project from the beginning until now, we've never thought, hey, you know what? Like, I think the game should be like this. I think the war should only last for like a day or two. We've always wanted them to last for much longer.
I will say that so far I like everything about that. spacing out the towns, which is something that I heard you talking about in the last stream, sort of putting weapons factories here and there and refineries over the place, as opposed to having them all clustered in these neat little towns, I think will go a long way to solving that problem. Because right now we need concrete objectives to fight over. Like, the community sort of pushes towards these things because these are places that we need to take. Taking a refinery means that you no longer have to ship BMATs all the way from main town, and taking a weapons factory means that you can supplement your general sort of armaments. With these things scattered around, be able to do that more often, and it won't feel like a total loss just because you lost one town. You won't be losing like 7 things.
That would also help put an emphasis on scavenging and ambushing enemy players, because if your supply lines are too far away, why not just take from the enemy?
Well, I'm
Yeah.
actually kind of curious, like how the different parts are going to come together. I don't know if there's like, like your top 3 things that you feel would affect lengthening gameplay. Like if you had to pick the top 3, what would you say are your biggest parts of the puzzle for that?
Yeah, so I think this is something that probably very soon you guys will know a lot more about. I'd say within a week from now, you're gonna know like almost exactly how all this is gonna work. And it's all basically set for the first version that we're gonna launch. We're just working on it now, and I just haven't had the time really to. I was gonna do like a dev blog where I was gonna pretty much like, walk through everything, but I didn't have time for that because just very big working on the game itself. But I think a lot will be revealed in the next week, and I think in terms of like the biggest things that's going to stretch out the war, I think that making certain things right now, like vehicles, and like your higher end weapons, I think that stuff is going to be lengthened, but not in a way that is going to break the pacing that we have right now. So in some ways it is going to feel like the pacing is going to be like what's like right now, in terms of if you just want to go and make something, but there's almost like another step that is on top of that, that might take longer. So we're trying to balance things so that you don't feel like you're playing an entirely different game. But we do want to add this sense of like what you're doing now might not be important in the next like hour. It might be important in like a day or two, right? So that's something we really want to make sure that we have, because that's like a missing piece of the game, right? Everything you do just kind of happens at once, and that works right now, but we definitely want to change that, and we're gonna have to do that somewhere, right? So in terms of top 3, I can say that's one, definitely one area. I think resources will see a little bit of a change, but not terribly different for the first version. Just a slight adjustment, and yeah, that's I guess that's all I can say right now.
Cool. I'm looking forward to the I don't know, seeing all the pieces come together, and that is a good point. Everything right now is nearly instant gratification. It's 2 steps to make a vehicle. It's 2 steps to do any single action. So that is an interesting point. Nothing requires a lot of effort or forethought, really.
Yeah, actually, there was a third thing I do remember now. It's actually a huge thing. I just forgot to mention it. The way that your bases, how I talked about this on the last stream, how there's going to be 3 tiers, right? So it's going to take you really long to reach the 3rd tier, right? And that's part of what I want to be talking about probably sometime over the next week. But you can expect it to be similar to what you would feel like in other like larger strategy games, where you kind of have to, there is a bit of like a waiting period before you can move up to the next level.
Sure. So I guess that probably the most common example of this would be like Age of Empires, that leveled system of building progression, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Pecking up.
I can't wait to beat up all the sheep in the game to get 500 food to advance to the Stone Age.
This is when the hammer sheep meme comes back, right? Yeah, that's cool.
We're not going to have to worry about loot boxes, right? Or like premium currency to help speed up your progression.
You'll get more sheep.
No,
to
we don't
hammer
have loot
with
boxes. We have
each loot
supply
box.
drops.
Oh, of course, of course.
I'm ready to buy keys.
April
Take
1st, I demand some loot
No.
box.
I would.
Markfoot, I have a quick question. And you mentioned something about how everything is so instant gratification at the beginning of the matches, and we do see that a lot with how fast tech progresses, especially in the weapons factories. But one thing I'm curious about is, I know you mentioned like the tiers are going to involve moving forward in the match, but like, what's to keep the gameplay from getting stale? Because if you can only have access to rifles with the whole tech system that's coming out, and what we theorize so far is that you'll get rifles and then you'll go and you'll get the blueprints to make SMGs and you'll put that into another weapons factory. What keeps it from, if you can't get the blueprint for the next weapon, or do you guys have any ideas about how you could potentially spice up the beginning gameplay? Because as much fun as it is building and doing all of that, I know a lot of combat players are probably going to get bored of using the same weapon or doing the same assault over and over again at the beginning of the matches.
Yeah, so we've kind of like we've thought about that problem quite extensively, and the way that we sort of like design the tiers is to make sure that everything that is within a tier, you can still have a complete war. So like we're very conscientious to make sure that you can still have all the back and forths. You can still play a complete war in the short term, but you're also planning for the next phase, right? And so there's almost a corner case there at the beginning of a war, because obviously you don't want the beginning of the war to be like everyone is just kind of sitting around for like a whole day or whatever, right? Before they can do anything. But we've sort of made it so that within the stuff that is available on that first day, you can still do like a whole lot. And the idea is that once you get past the first day, then the progression engine kind of will start. And then the expectation is then that you have to start to prepare for the next day. And if you don't do that, then, you know, I guess in a way you will be left behind a little bit. But you know, we're going to see what happens, right? And we want to make sure that, you know, I guess just sort of to summarize the whole thing, it's just been something that we've been thinking very hard about. Make sure that there's a short-term activity always, and make sure there's a long-term activity. And I think another thing that we really hope is going to help with that is we want to add more things into the world for players to fight over. So it's not just the towns, right? Like right now, it's just a very flat world. Like you just kind of go from one town over to the next and they just kind of keep doing the same thing. But we don't want that to be the only focus, right? We want there to be lots of other things that you can fight over. And I think that will also fill the time. So yeah, it's not going to be all there at the beginning, but we definitely want to work towards making the world much more interesting, and have much more like one-offs. Like you can just be sort of focusing on like one area of the world because you want to capture some strategic building, and that could be something that you spend your first day on, right?
Awesome. No, it's really enlightening, actually.
I actually have something to talk about. So I actually feel mildly gratified that you talked about there being 3 different tech levels, and also that we got to see there was a separate tech level for a tier 1 pillbox and a tier 2 pillbox. That was something that I've talked about a few separate times to several different players. What about more things with that? Have you thought about like possibly there being some form of engineering kit that allows you to build those Tech 2 pillboxes, or do we just upgrade them with hammers?
There is, so we sort of have different phases in which we want to try new things for World Conquest, and as part of the first phase, we don't have anything specifically like that, but there is some thought being put into how to add some extra sort of stages to the building process so that it can allow for possibly more layers. Because right now it's like, even when you build, it's very short term, right? Like you can just hammer something out, and then boom, you have like this huge wall or something, right? Which works well. But if we want to do a more complex structure that perhaps maybe we want to take longer in some other way, we have some ideas for that, but probably won't see that in the first phase.
What about things such as a higher tech variant of rifles, possibly later on in the game, getting rifles that could even kill some of the earlier vehicles, early combat vehicles?
Well, that's actually an interesting point. Like, is the progression in upgrades? Like we're seeing progression for the upgrading a type of structure. Going from the wooden pillbox to that concrete one. Is that going to show in other parts of the
Infantry
game?
equipment.
Oh, like you're saying with regards to the weapons and stuff, right?
Yeah, like infantry equipment.
It's possible. I think that's something that we haven't focused on that much right now at the beginning. I think there's a lot of like with that approach, we'd have to definitely make sure that we don't, because when it comes to weapons, we want to make sure everything still feels realistic and like grounded and stuff, and we don't have suddenly a tier 2 weapon that's like twice as strong or something, because that would just be weird, right? So we'd have to figure out how to do it, but it'd be interesting to hear what you guys would think would be cool from such a system. Like if the rifles, for example, had more tiers.
I had thought of an intriguing idea in which the first variant was sort of the stock standard, and while it was definitely good and couldn't necessarily be messed with too much, the Tech 2 variant could be more or less not better, but an offshoot. Sort of like how the carbine is good, yeah, but I'd still want a rifle in a lot of situations. I wouldn't necessarily automatically take the carbine over the rifle just because it was available. And then, like, the Tech 3 variant could be better.
Well, and that's something that's an interesting point. Is like the way that you have to implement this, though, because sure you can just replace a weapon with a weapon, which is what we see now. We have a rifle being replaced with a carbine being replaced with storm rifle or something of that nature, if it ever comes into the field. But like it's still a replacement. It's not an upgrade. It'd be curious to see if there's something as simple as like right now we have tech parts. If you could simply start dedicating tech parts into 10 tech parts to upgrade a small percentage of accuracy or range on the rifle, like just some type of like quality boost, a weapon quality modifier, if you so to speak. Just some minor things that won't make that weapon leapfrog any existing tech, but it gives you the option of saying, hey, we really want to use rifles quite a bit in this war. Let's
Weapon mods?
well, not even just weapon mods, just like a simple
Like an
quality
attribute
increase.
start.
Yeah, an attribute. So like +1 to damage drop off or something.
The thing of it is like it also depends on if you're talking about implementing a rifle and then an upgraded rifle and having those two live in synchronous, or replacing the other one and having like you're just building up and you'll never see your original rifle again.
Right. Well, and it would probably be something like that. Like I guess you wouldn't necessarily not want to have your damage increase or something like that. So
There is a possibility in saying that you lose like accuracy and take damage, and then a rifle still be relevant that it has just normal stat. Like the upgraded ones could have like cons as well.
You could do a modular design too, simply by taking the rifle model and increasing the magazine to 15. And the first level is the rifle, semi-automatic, like just whatever it is, like bolt action. And then level 2, it turns into a carbine. So you have semi and then semi-automatic. So like you can go between like longer distance fire or like faster fire rate, and you can choose between that. And then for the third tier, it adds like a third fire rate. So you have 3 options to choose from. So you go like long range sniper, semi-automatic, and then fully automatic. And you just take all of the guns in the game and turn them into one. That way, like
I mean, at that
like a
point, though,
mode.
we feel less like individual, or we feel more like individual soldiers and less like a shapeless blob. I sort of like the hopeless army feeling we have, where we're all equally insignificant in the
Well,
grand scheme of things.
everything about a war matters. Like what you have, what your tools are. If you suddenly have a man running around with every tool at his, it's like you're carrying like so many guns in Call of Duty or something or some other game.
Yeah.
It's kind of a offshoot.
Have the
Plus,
overkill
you
weapon.
have to compensate for the fact that going from a bolt action to a carbine, which is gas powered and
Right.
all that
Well,
kind of stuff. But
expanding on that idea, I know as many people are gonna fucking blow me up for this. I QM a lot, and so one of the problems I face is that like the guns disappear, like they constantly disappear, and so like you can never produce enough of one type of weapon because people are always taking it. They're always running out in the field and dying with it. So if you consolidate the weapon that's used, and maybe you change up the type of ammo that's produced instead. So like maybe to use the carbine modification on the rifle, you need the carbine magazine and the storm rifle magazine, and so it changes the size of the magazine and what the function is.
So I think one thing that's really cool is that once the wars are lasting longer, and once we have the progression systems in the game that we're planning, then it really makes sense to have much more of these kinds of features. Because right now, with the wars being much shorter and things feeling much more temporary, it sort of doesn't make a whole lot of sense to like for these systems to be there. There's almost going to be too much content for the scope of the wars, if that makes any sense. But once there is the breathing room to say, hey, I'm going to chip away at this thing for like a day or two, and the outcome of that is like suddenly we can like customize something much more, then it makes more sense, right? Versus now, it will feel very like it will feel very compressed.
Out of place.
It'll feel out of place, and it'll feel very fast and compressed. Like, okay, we went from rifles to some machine guns to now this like really customized thing, all within like 3 hours, and that just wouldn't make sense,
Yeah.
right? There's almost no room for that kind of complexity, and I think that once we get through this hard period, which is going to be coming in the next like few weeks, the next month or so, and the game kind of settles a bit after that period, then I think we can kind of sit down and be like, how can we make things more complicated now? And that's going to be really exciting once we reach that point.
well, that's an interesting point too. Is you talked about being able to chip away at dedicating your time to a small aspect of the game. It's really interesting. That will lend itself greatly to I had an effect on this war. I helped make this weapon happen or this extra.
I got the last 10 tech parts.
Yeah, right. But especially player achievement, like just from a feelings, like right now you can say I built this entire town and something as simple as that, but there isn't like a lot of long lasting player contribution that sits around anymore. A foxhole that you put up 10 minutes ago might not be there in 10 minutes.
Well, I
So,
mean, it's not just the foxhole.
Yeah,
It's like the whole war might not be there the next day that you get back.
that's true.
In most cases, which is like a bit of a bummer. I mean, I sound really harsh on the game as is right now, and it's like it's not. I think I'm only harsh on it because I feel like it can be so much better. I mean, like in reality, there's a really fun game there right now. It's obviously fun, and like a whole bunch of you guys are playing it. But it could be so much better, which is why I sound kind of harsh on like the game now.
Well, and we had a taste of that. We had a taste, World Conquest way back in the day, and oh, what a taste it was. But I'm curious, like, did World Conquest back then hold up to what your goals were, like as an idea? Did that hold up to? I mean, we are seeing one world as a result, but
Well, no. Well, I think there were some very small things we saw that were like, hey, this is really cool. Like suddenly you do feel like you're in a much larger war, and like the context of the war was much larger scope, and that was really cool. And it was really cool when we saw people actually using the chat to like talk to each other. sort of like across the regions, but you know what is funny? I actually feel like World Conquest was probably a little bit like worse than how you guys remember it, because at the time, like, there was a lot of frustration over World Conquest. I think maybe
Everybody like gave up.
I mean, I think it was maybe one of those things where people found it fun, but it was also like equally frustrating, right?
Sure.
It's like once you got past the like oh wow, this is so amazing, you like started to see the small parts of it that were like, oh hey, that needs to be fixed. Oh, that's not
It
so
also
good.
had a sort of artificial bigness to it because, while yeah, there were 4 maps tied together, once you get down to it, just sprinting across a road, dropping your pistol and hammer, you can get across a map pretty quick. And the only reason why it felt so big at times is because you're stuck there waiting at the border because you're now in a queue to get to the front. And so
Yeah.
you can't get them that shipment of like howitzers that you made in the back map using the tech parts that everybody's sort of siphoned there.
They're supposed to be like those border posts or whatever they were, like to transport
Oh,
materials across
yeah.
when the players couldn't. Was that
Yeah, but
was
those
that ever
only
implemented in the original, or did that
They
not make
came
it?
in, I think, like the very last war, I want to say, but like the colonials didn't show up and the wardens sort of screwed off because the UN was there, so we didn't really need to be there in order to win.
Well, and it
Only
really
like UBGE showed up and 82DK went to go play on a normal server.
it really exposed a lot of those, extra considerations that you really need to take in. And the community itself wasn't, large. The player base wasn't sufficiently large enough to fully test it 100%. But it gave enough of like a glance at what other considerations you need to take into account.
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest differences between now and then is that we're like we're taking a lot more time to sort of do things more from the ground up. Whereas the original World Conquest was, let's just like duct tape these 4 regions together. Let's just take the normal Foxhole and try to stick it together, like stick these 4 regions together and see what happens. But now it's very different, like from the resource system to the progression system. It's not all going to be there at the beginning, but like we're planning it out much more from the ground up, and we're also, the way that we're building it also at the back end is much more serious this time around. Like the server that we had at the beginning that we wrote to sort of handle the logic that kind of like ties together all the 4 regions was just like it was a giant hack, right? Like it was like we did it really quickly, and it just like barely worked, right?
I remember. I think it was you were referencing the fact that you literally had to start up the servers at the same time for everything to work.
Yeah, exactly. But now we're no, and that was a serious thing. Like we were literally sitting there in chat and be like, "I'm starting it right now," and then we all hit the button. It was really lame, but now this time around, that server is not a hack, and we're gonna be able to do a lot of cool stuff with it. And I just like, I wish I can talk about it all now, but like, there's a few reasons why it's a tough balance, because I don't want to like overhype things, because that's always a huge mistake, right? But at the same
Can't
time,
spoil Christmas.
there is some cool stuff that I can't talk about yet. But the new way that we're approaching this server that kind of ties everything together will allow us to make the world feel much more like one, and much less like these like 6 separate regions, or eventually like 9, right?
I had 2 things to bring up. Then it turned into 1 thing. Then it turned back into 2, and was almost 3. But then I forgot the 3rd one again. So I remember at one point y'all had talked about how originally you guys were sort of looking at 9 maps and being like, "Oh, this is going to be a big task." And now that y'all are almost done with making 9 maps, or at least having their theme more or less set up, y'all had said that this almost doesn't feel like anywhere near enough at this point. It feels way too small. Might we see more maps being added to our 3x3 grid?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I guess that we'll kind of, I mean, we're gonna do the 9 first, and then we're gonna see how many players are playing, and if we need more, then we've definitely talked about it, and I think it'll be cool. I think, in all honesty, the larger the world, as long as there's players, I think it's just much more cool. Like if I didn't have to worry about the resources or like having enough players or anything like that, if we had all that, like if it was like a 4x4, that would be really awesome, right?
It would be definitely intriguing to have to worry about the line collapsing in the map next to you, and their line collapsing means that they can get behind and attack your logistics, which means now you have to worry about the back map, which means now you have to worry about the other back maps.
Oh, that's what makes it great is that
Yeah.
just the grand scale of actual strategy that goes into this. That
It feels
is
like a
so
chess
good.
game for all the pieces.
Now, you had mentioned the maps. There's supposed to be some changes coming up. How the maps are laid out essentially. How drastic of changes are we looking at with these maps?
I think in some cases, so there's sort of, I think there's going to be like two stages to the map changes. One is that we have to do certain mandatory changes just to make World Conquest work like how we want to work. So that's like, let's just do what needs to be done to make this whole thing actually function, right?
Remove hedgerows.
But that might not necessarily be like the perfect version of it. And then I think what we might do afterwards is we'll come back around and we'll be like, okay, not only do we want to make it function, we want to sort of like redesign the layouts of many areas to actually make sense in the context of the larger war, which we kind of put some thought into that the first time around, but it was just really hard to see without actually having a world conquest, right? So I think we'll see that. And there's just a lot more work that we want to put into making the world feel more natural. Like right now it's very like video gamey, like, everything is pretty symmetrical in terms of the maps, and you have like every town looks the same. I think Matt's gonna kill me because if you heard me say that, because I think we do put a lot of work to make sure that the towns don't look the same. But I think he would agree though that I think he would at least agree that we do stretch thin on how many different ways we can lay out the towns. And I think with World Conquest now, we're not gonna be as beholden to like these very rigid rules. Like every map needs to have at least like 8 towns, and in these 8 towns there has to be at least like this many factories and this many refineries. We can do anything, right? We can have a whole map that doesn't even have like a refinery if that's something that we wanted, right?
Nothing but world structures, no man's land. Calling it now.
Oh my god.
So
Yeah, and I was
go ahead.
when it like Matt was talking about making less towns in certain maps, was towns going to kind of get redistributed into the other remaining towns and like make those towns bigger, or?
Sorry, I kind of missed that first part of the question.
So Matt was saying how you guys rework the maps, you might remove some of the towns, and my question is removing some of the towns to make the distances between towns longer, is that going to contribute to the remaining towns on the map becoming bigger and more urbanized hotspots, so to speak?
Might we see like an increased number of buildings in one town, like 4 refinery or 4 armories in one town, since we're going to only have
like
one less town, or
building
something of that
structures,
nature,
even
right?
just houses too.
Like regular structures to make
Yeah, so I think the variance between sizes of towns will probably be larger. So just by that alone, I think you'll see that happening. But I think there won't necessarily there'll be less towns, but not necessarily less places of interest, if that makes sense. So when I'm talking about the towns, I actually mean like an urban environment. So there's going to be perhaps less of those, but what might be substituted in would be like farms and like, much more other like types of places that I can't really talk about it right now, but just more stuff that we have planned, so that you don't actually just feel like, hey, just walking from one place that looks like one thing, and you walk to the next place and it kind of looks the same. And I definitely think we do want to have larger towns. That's kind of the simple answer to that question. It's definitely something we want to do. And furthermore, one of our huge goals of this year, at some point, probably once World Conquest kind of like settles in a bit more, is that we do want to go back and revamp the towns in a huge way. Right now, the towns are limited because the amount of like assets that we have is relatively pretty limited, and we have this plan now to go back
We're
and
playing
make
a blueprint.
exactly, so that we have we want to make them feel more rich. We want to make them have many more layers. So it's gonna be really good. Yeah, it's cool.
So
It's definitely. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. So like with the whole process that's coming up here, um, with the whole process, we're going to have some prototypes coming up. I know you said you have a theoretical dev blog coming up. I'll kind of put this into perspective. Like, what kind of, long story short, steps are we going to be having between now and, say, the stable version? Like, what are your major
Right.
Roadmap.
major points?
So One World has a couple of parts. There's World Conquest for sure. There's the home regions, and then there's the skirmish mode, right? So World Conquest is going to be the focus first. So you'll probably see that in more of like a standalone way. Like we're going to launch that first, and that's probably going to be coming not too far in the future. And we're going to be launching the experimental version of that as the first step, like I talked about last time. And then I'd imagine that we'd go through a war or two and see how that goes. And no doubt there'll be a lot of problems. So we're going to fix those problems. We'll probably roll out a new version, and then we'll do a couple of iterations of that until that kind of shakes down. And then we'll like add in the home regions and a bunch of other features. And then we'll see how skirmish mode is going to fit in. And I think that whole process, it's really hard to say how long that's going to take. I think in the best case, it could, take like a month or something, but I think like it's more likely going to take longer than that. But in terms of like the first time you guys are going to be able to play this, I think it's not too far off. I'm not going to mention any dates right now because it's been a mistake in the past.
Dates are bad.
But I have to say it's not going to be like last year when we kept talking about you guys are going to be playing World Conquest soon. This is actually soon for real this time.
Nice.
Soon, TM.
So with that being said, is it excuse me, basically all hands on deck for One World, or do you see any I don't know, side projects or other pieces of the puzzle? Like we have a big demand for reworking, say, the rank system. Do you foresee anything like coming up in between the One World?
I think there's small things that we're gonna pick off. Like we're definitely gonna be fixing bugs, and we're gonna be working on little small issues as we go. I think in this next update, you'll see a couple of smaller things that's probably gonna be lost in the cracks. Actually, one cool thing is it's just kind of a little bit of like it's a small piece of news. It's a small change, but you're gonna be able to throw your sticky bombs, which is a small thing.
That's nice.
Because people haven't really been using that. So that's just a small. So that's kind of an example of like some small things we might pick off. But in terms of like improvements to the squad system and that sort of thing, that's kind of like the number 2 on our list. So I think we may have talked about this at one point, but the top 3 priorities for us is number 1 is One World. Number 2 is the communications tools and the squad system.
Thank you.
It kind of falls under that. And then number 3 is the town revamp. That's sort of the big 3 things on our list that we're going to be working on for the
In that order?
More or less, yeah. I mean, some of it is gonna like overlap because it's just like the reality of like game development. You don't literally do one thing and then you start the next one. You have to kind of like start working
Well,
on
I mean,
it.
you've got a
Great
decently
spot.
sized team, so everybody, of course, can't all be working on the squad update. Like, unless you are going to do model changes along with the squad update, of course, anybody who does like physical stuff is going to need to have something to do still.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like a pipeline, and managing that pipeline is actually very tricky. But one really cool thing, speaking of the team, is that so last fall we did bring on a few more people, and at the beginning, like it was almost like because we were bringing on new people, it was difficult to jump right into like working on the really hard stuff because there's sort of like an onboarding process, right? But now that we're kind of over that hump, we're starting to see the benefits, and we're able to pull off like much larger features. And I think in these next couple of updates, you guys are gonna start to see the results of that. Like
Y'all got like another concept artist, another coder, and like somebody who also does more 3D models, right? Something of that nature.
yeah, we technically grew from 7 to 12, right? So it's a lot. Is a lot, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But we're able to do a lot more, and now that everyone is up to speed, it's just I'm feeling it. I'm definitely feeling like, hey, you know that feature that we've always wanted? Well, now we can do it, right? And
I definitely look forward to seeing more building variety. Just being able to see like even some colonial structures and
I
some
feel like
forest structures
with every
spattered
question, with every question you guys are giving Mark, I can hear you guys like drooling through your microphones. Just to let you know.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Speaking of drooling, we have something new for you guys.
All right, of course.
That was a
Uh,
sloppy transition, but I liked it.
Yeah, that was a
I
really
mean,
weird
drool
one,
is
but
sloppy.
It
So,
needed to happen.
speaking of new things and new buildings and all this fun stuff, we have some concept art, and I know that Mark kind of dropped this on us and said, "Here you go. This is supposed to be internal only, but hey." So, interesting things about this. I know my eyes went immediately straight for that repair facility looking thing that tank is driving up to. Of course, this is all just pure speculation. None of this means anything, but I really want that to be like something usable within the game, and it most likely won't be. Who knows? But um, of course, everyone's looking at the tank too. I guarantee it.
It looks like a warehouse. It looks like somewhere where you could stockpile shipments of things, like not weapons, but like shipments, and then you could take those shipments out using trucks and then take those to the front.
Wait,
I mean,
which one are we
these
talking
would
about? This
probably
tank is driving up
be
to?
these would probably be things like you'd find on the edge of the home region and the edge of the actual region you're fighting over. So then
Sorry,
you could transport
we're talking
stuff to
about
them.
the building that tank is driving up to?
Yeah. Well, of all
Oh, I
the
was
other
just gonna
things, yeah.
say, the tank is driving up to almost seems like if that platform lowers by any point, it seems like that fabled suggestion of having the vehicle storage, because then you would just lower the vehicles into this storage bay and pull them out at any time.
Ooh,
Hey,
That would make me a happy camper.
Well,
Holy
not
shit.
not even just that. Like you can also look at this way. Like if you have a crate that's ready to go, right? You load it onto like the back of a flatbed. Wouldn't you need like some type of crane or? Well, you
Oh,
have
yeah,
cranes here,
yeah.
but I really look at this as what the what's the skirm not the skirmish, but the home region, that home island.
Yeah.
I really feel like this screams the home island. Just having all these docks, you're shipping stuff out.
This looks more like it's offloading than onloading, though.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it very much does. Like just by the direction of
This could be
things,
concept art of the next map. A sort of colonial base camp in the middle of a busy port town.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see. We have a few things going on here. You have there's actually, now that I look at this, there's only a few recognizable parts that exist right now. You have the trucks, you have those barracks in the background, and you have some of the models of the different destroyed structures on the map. past that, everything on this whole thing is practically new, which is cool to see. New inspiration and everything. But
Yeah, so I guess the one thing I can say about this, and just to provide a bit of the context, this was actually like an internal piece of concept art that wasn't meant to be shown to the outside world, but we decided it'd be cool to share it anyways.
Yeah.
And this was made because there's sort of these new places in the world that we're trying to like build out for a specific purpose, but we had a very hard time in like visualizing how it would look. And sometimes we can just kind of make something right into the map and it just works out, but we were kind of all not able to visualize it. So Julian, he spent some time in sort of like doing this concept so that we could all look at it and be like, okay, that's how these particular places should look and feel, right? So that's kind of that's kind of the story behind this.
Well, there's a lot of cool little elements that you can grab inspiration from. Something as simple as, the stack of crates, for instance. If you take that, you turn it into a model, and you just kind of place those around the map as reusable assets. It can do a lot to fill the gaps of the world. You talk about having like the farms and all these other not even destinations, but just something that fills the map. You have so much that you can
Locations.
start filling it in. Yeah.
And like the destroyed car assets that they had shown off.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they're only in Tempest Island right now, but I assume we'll see those more once the maps are revamped and things like that. And that'll bring more life into the world, so then you get a feel of what kind of world we're in. Just kind of get you immersed in the setting.
Now that tank, we all have to ask: is that tank even remotely an accurate representation of what is possible to come?
Yeah, I can. I can't wait.
He was going to, but he was like, "Never mind."
I mean, it looks so good, and I'm actually curious what your thoughts are, real quick, on the tank that we have now. Is that holding up to the expectation of a light tank?
I think it's probably like a little heavier than a light tank, but it's also a different world, right? So
Sure. Yeah, I suppose.
they're in this particular world, light tanks might be a little different, but we have concepted like more tanks, and we know what some of the other tanks are going to look like, and some of that stuff it's not set in stone, but we are fairly certain about some of that stuff.
The Colonial light tank looks well enough. If you beef up if you beef up its chassis, it could be basically a heavy tank, or not a heavy, but a medium tank. The Warden tank though looks like a silly box. I love it, but it's definitely not a light tank. It's like somebody was like, "Okay, boys, we're making a light tank. All right, so where's the furnace and chat room going to be inside of it? We need to make room for the carpet, and we definitely need these exquisite chairs for our tank commander. We entertain guests in the foyer."
Yeah.
Okay, so like one interesting thing is that the gates in Westgate, right? We had to measure that specifically to make sure that it could fit the largest tank that we're gonna plan for the game. Right?
Whoa.
That's awesome.
Oh, all right.
Oh, that's
Gonna
awesome.
go back to Westgate then.
Everyone's gonna go look at that now.
Shit.
Actually, that's a good
Everybody
point.
quick,
like,
go measure Westgate.
how many people
What's the
across?
width of a
Yeah.
person?
That's actually a good point, because there are some spots on like Weathered Expanse, for instance, that have like these walls and these arches. Trying to shove a truck through those was great. It kind of clips against the wall, but if you shake your truck just right, you can get it through into these obnoxious places.
So not all. So the order in which the assets were built, by the time we sort of like determined certain things, some assets were kind of like out of date. So certain things like some of the bridges might not exactly fit the requirements that we've kind of thought of now, but we still, we're not going to go and like remake the bridges quite yet. as an example of that, right? So it
Mark,
kind of depends on when things were made, right?
Mark, you have no idea what you've done. People are now pinging me, telling me they're going to go measure the gates.
Well, I was gonna say, can someone message like Crazy or a dev who can do it, because none of the servers are on Westgate right now. So
spin
can
up
you
a
just
server.
can you just actually, I was gonna say, can you just reset a server, whichever server the Colonials are winning the most on?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Nice. So, yeah, I can't wait to see all this come together.
That's actually pretty interesting. That's nice to know that you guys
Oh.
are kind of like, you may have not have updated everything yet, but you're like thinking ahead with like things as well, like with the gate size, how you explained that.
Well, it's nice. Yeah, it is nice to see all a lot of forethought coming into play. But it's also nice to know that the pieces are being visualized together and not just one small piece here, one small piece here. You kind of have a little bit of forethought and planning and
So I have a
integration.
quick question.
Oh,
In the lore aspect, was the bulwark designed to fit the tanks, or were the tanks designed to fit the bulwark? Just saying. Theory craft in here.
um,
I don't have an answer to that.
so
yeah, you could being mad about it. You can just spam him.
there you go. No one spam Matt. No one spam Matt.
Yeah, don't actually do that.
No, just kidding. Spam him.
They're not gonna give us stuff if you do.
Sorry, devs.
Matt's going to hide the next lore pieces even harder if you do that.
I really want to see like a complete lore book or something of that nature. Anywho, we're getting kind of down to the end of the wire here. I just want to kind of plug a few things real quick. KFC has been so awesome enough as to take the events calendar and make it a new events calendar. I like it. It looks good. It's just right there, Foxhole game events calendar. If it actually exists somewhere very easy to click on the website, who knows? It's not in the header that I know of. Change that. But there is an events calendar, and as you can see, there's the live stream. That's us. It's off by an hour. I don't know what time zone that is, but who knows? I do like this. We could start seeing all these events. Like if you look at Saturday, there's so much going on there. War games, I like that. This is cool, and I really like to see the dots and the number of events going on. There are talks for more things to come, of course. The other thing I want to plug out there as well, that's going to be happening on the 28th. Theoretically, we have a new stream coming. Brought to you by Rhodes. He does the FCBC, Rhodes Go Ever On. He is starting up a new stream called Strat Chat. That will actually take place here on the FCM channel as well, which I'm definitely looking forward to. So that's the 28th is the theoretical first part of that. As of right now, there's only a Russian clan war, so that's good. Stay tuned for that, of course. Basically, you're going to go through talk strategy about the different wars and all that fun stuff. So I can't wait to see that. And there's already some great art happening with this stuff. Scout QM is
Put that in the
confirmed.
slides right now. Secret part we didn't notice in the concept art.
That's a small little thing there. Scout QM. So
I gotta put that in creative right now.
it's nice.
Is it bad that I'm actually going back up to check and see if that was in the original?
I checked, it's not. But holy shit, that was fast.
Yeah, it was like it's done in invisible ink, and you gotta put like a UV light over it.
My meme machine was warm and ready, so I thought I'd just spit one
Oh
out quick.
my.
I can't wait to see, if any inspiration comes of that art other than memes, of course. I want to see if people like take the tank and redesign it, or
Hey, Mark, with more buildings and actual towns going to be sprinkled throughout, will we see like colonial or warden propaganda up on the walls at all?
Ooh, yeah.
can I get some sprays?
So
Yeah.
Nice.
So there is actually like a little bit of that we've worked on that's going to be somewhere. It's not. You'll find out. It's not a big thing, but there is some small thing that's related to that you'll probably see.
I would suggest that any reference to colonials written by Wardens, they be called Connies. My personal opinion.
Collies, cactuses.
It's like commies, like, you know, the good old.
Good old
I think my favorite misspelling I saw was colorials.
Colorials?
Chlorenials.
Any other thoughts at all?
Yes, many thoughts.
Many. Any useful final thoughts?
Yes. So
The fan art contest.
Fan
earlier
art
today,
contest.
somebody. Fan art contest. Actually, that's actually important. I'll shut my gob.
Well, the closing date has already passed, correct?
Has
Or
it?
am I
I don't know.
No.
mistaken?
No, for sure.
Oh,
no,
whoops.
it has
It's
not.
open for quite a while.
Never mind.
Take a look at that. I know. Everyone wants
have
one of
to
those
submit
sweet Foxhole T-shirts. That's for sure. Yeah, it looks like the fan art contest, which I have to click like 4 links to find.
Yeah, you gotta win,
Foxhole.com
so then you can put
contest.
you can put scout QMs in
It's actually at the
lore.
very top of the site.
It is.
as
It's
well.
very much right there, but not the events calendar.
You guys should put in like
It's in info.
colonial
if you
and
put
word
your thing over
flyers.
info.
Oh, yeah. So what's that date? Come on, date deadline. The March 9th. So we've got like 2 months, month and a half. So, of course, I don't know if memes are going to qualify for this
No.
fan art.
Scout QM
No.
will probably make it in there.
No scout QMs.
Unless
Lurkus,
they like make it super epic.
Lurkus,
but,
are you
no.
submitting anything? Do we?
Yeah, I'm actually working on something right now. I still need to scan it and everything, and then actually color it.
Can't wait.
If I have spare time, I might submit something as well.
I don't make art. I just do like wallpapers and things.
Says the guy that's like actually pretty good at Photoshop.
All I do is reuse their assets for everything. I mean, it works. Yeah, so our fan art contest, definitely check it. Can't wait to see some of that. I know there's some talks about going into things like the community highlights and stuff like that. I really want to start diving more into those and looking at them. And there was a theoretical thing that Pico and I wanted to start up called Community Pulse. And I think that's one of the things we want to hit on. Can't wait to start diving through a lot of these awesome pieces of artwork. I can't wait to see the quality of artwork that comes out with this as well.
Yeah, I want to see.
Yeah, because it's one thing to just do it, just to put it out there. It's another to actually get some gratification out of it.
Now there's there's a carrot on a stick, as it were.
Carrot on a
Right.
stick. The sweet Steam key. Work directly with a dev to add lore into the world of Foxhole. And by a dev,
Scout
it means
QMs.
Matt. It's
I love how I originally pushed that out there as a joke, and it's grown to this beautiful baby that
A
I'm
boy and his
gonna
minus.
take
I mean, it
care.
makes sense. You're standing in one place. You might as well throw a backpack on and spam the button a few times.
Yes.
All right.
Can
well,
I make artwork of a scout QM?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, it
But
has to
Scout
be good,
QM is a meme. It has to be like really good. It has to like actually have some real
Yeah.
feeling to it.
Well,
Head of recon.
I think that's about wrapping us up. I don't know any immediately final thoughts, Mark, at all? On the spot.
Not too much. I think just be prepared for world conquest, and I think if there's one thing that I'm gonna be trying to, that I've been really wanting to say, just like I really want you guys to be like excited about the process and not particularly the first time you see this thing. I think it's really important. It's gonna be like something that's gonna take some time, and I think it's gonna be fun, that whole process. But there's a certain, you guys been waiting for this for so long, and I think that it may be a little bit I guess maybe not
Rough.
as productive if everyone just kind of
Rickety.
rushes in on the first day and it's just be like, hey, it broke, like, why did it break? Sort of thing. I think we have to sort of look at it
I
as like,
remember shifters had to do some like personal testing with like either Matt or HB or someone, because He'd managed to find a marvelous way to break the edges of the map by parking vehicles as them.
I was there.
Yeah, that's right. So like, I think to summarize, be excited about the process. And
We already bought the card and
gonna
put a
be
couple
fine,
thousand
so.
miles on it. We can't return it anyways.
Yeah, it's all dinged to scratch. And, I mean, at this point, Mark, you could probably just throw us whatever you guys have worked on, and the community will just eat it up and play it. Like you could have left us the broken remnants of World Conquest with floating trucks and shit like that. We probably still would have played the game because it's fun.
Yeah, but he
We don't
doesn't
have
develop
money
for
for
Ark,
it.
does he?
People
Oh,
complain no matter
Jesus.
what happens.
Drama alert.
It's okay. This is an unofficial stream.
That's true.
I think we should thank him for his time. And
Absolutely.
also, sorry for the torture for asking all these guys asking you questions that you simply can't answer.
I will ask one last thing. Was any of our wild speculation spot on? You don't have to say which one, but was any
Like
of it
these
spot on?
questions right here. It's like, why do you ask when you know he can't answer?
I mean, it's not a
I
solid
think that some of the something that I think Lurkus mentioned
Ooh.
about the concept art was, I think it was pretty spot on, but I think
Ooh, all right.
my memory's a bit hazy, so I could have been off. But someone was talking about it.
Quickly,
and,
somebody immediately
Scout
go through
cam,
the
guys.
Twitch stream.
It's gonna be a thing.
and something was said, and it was like, yeah, I think that's pretty much what it's for. But
Perfect.
we'll see what happens. But I do want to thank you guys for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, you're always welcome, of course,
Yes.
as are the other members of the team. I think having a lore chat has to be higher up on their list as well, right?
Yeah, we need to get
Yes.
mad at. We need to force
Matt.
him in here.
Of course, he will deny everything, but that's okay.
No, he's
Right.
just going to start spouting off things like the Colonials are actually blue, the Wardens stole the blue from their uniforms. Ultra conspiracy theory time.
That'd be
Let's see
great.
which ones are true and which ones
Tinfoil
aren't.
hat stream one.
Let's do this. Let's get Matt slightly intoxicated, and by slightly I mean let's take him to his favorite pub. I know I owe Markfoot a drink still, but yeah, let's have some fun. And I do look forward to dissecting every single part of World Conquest when it comes out. I mean, supporting the community as much as possible in
I look
maintaining a
forward to
calm
seeing Mark again
manner.
here after the World Conquest or the One World Update cycle ends, and then hearing him talk about things that like didn't make the cut or things that they scrapped because it was terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to the. I mean, once we get that magical dev blog that you talked about, I think we'll be able to see a lot more, and actually fully, be able to manage our expectations, but also be excited for what's to come after we see the first prototypes.
I want the blooper reel of things going absolutely horrible, like the closed testing bugs.
All right.
Sapphire, where are you?
Yes, Seth. All right. That's it for now. Of course, Markfoot, thank you guys for coming. Glad to have you. Always welcome. And
Thank you.
we will see you guys next time.
Au revoir.
There you go.
Bye. I love you.
That's